Tonight's Fireside CharLA is brought to you in partnership with the United Latinx Fund and the Latino Coalition of Los Angeles. This online event series aims to engage, educate, and advocate on important and timely topics that impact LA's Latinx community during this COVID-19 pandemic, and we know firsthand how deeply our communities have been affected. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Cristina Sanchez. I am pleased to be your moderator. I know you're all very used to Richard doing this. He's got it down packed, so bear with me if I get a little bit off script. I'm also a senior partner for Milagro Strategy Group, and happy to be fully bilingual, just like our guest as well. I'm also the board treasurer for ULF, and I'm happy to play that role. I'd like to quickly thank the sponsors for tonight who make these series possible, and that's Southern California Gas Company and JP Morgan Chase for their commitment and their investment in nonprofits like United Latinx Fund that work to transform, uplift, and improve our community's quality of life. Our program is designed to engage you, our audience. If you have questions, please enter it in the chat box. We will be monitoring them, and we will try to get to everybody's questions tonight because I believe we have a good audience because of our guest tonight. So thank you, Kevin, for joining us. Council Member-elect, perdón. Please note that everyone's audio and video will be muted until the Q&A. And also tonight's program is streaming on Facebook Live. And to access the video, please visit the ULF's Facebook page, the link, and you can host a viewing party. So show me your phone and we'll be able to gather more audiences if you host that to Facebook Live. Tonight's conversation centers on reimagining leadership. We've heard that word a lot, reimagining leadership for LA City Council District 14, addressing homelessness, particularly in Skid Row, and of course, the ever important Census 2020 and the engagement challenges that we're facing. Again, our guest tonight needs no introduction, but I am happy to say that he's been a public servant trailblazer, Kevin De Leon, President Pro Tem Emeritus of the California State Senate, and Council President-elect for the Council District 14. Kevin De Leon was elected to the State Senate in 2010, and in 2014, he was elected by his colleagues to lead the Senate, making him the first Latino to serve as President Pro Tem in over a century. Before his election to the Senate, Kevin served 4 years in the State Assembly. Today, you can see Kevin advocating for and sharing his vision for Council District 14 while he's also teaching at UCLA and USC. Imagine, I don't want to know what that's like, by the way, Kevin. He definitely has LA covered, so please let's welcome Council Member-elect Kevin De Leon. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos.
No, my God, Cristina, no, antes que nada un saludo muy cordial, un abrazo muy fuerte de solidaridad a usted y toda nuestra querida gente. Yo me siento bien honrado estar contigo hoy este día. Sabes que no lo vas a creer, pero yo nunca jamás hasta la fecha he hecho un Zoom, webinar, fireside chat por la fogata con latinos, believe it or not. This is the very first time. So in that sense, I'm incredibly honored to have the opportunity to be with such an incredible dynamic leader such as you, Cristina, to all the incredible folks at United Latinx Fund, as well as the Latino Coalition of Los Angeles. Thank you very much. Me siento bien honrado to be here today. I did a few fireside chats today, Zoom webinars. I've been doing so many of them, but believe it or not, this is the first time I've actually done one with our community, and that's why I feel so honored to be here with you today.
On the contrary, Council Member-elect, I think you and I go back a long time to my days in Spanish language television. And of course, the fact that we're doing the Spanish language interpretation, I think is very important. And I do need to warn you that at the end of these, we do ask everybody for a full shot because we know that everybody looks great here, but we want to know what you're wearing, if it's shorts, jeans, whatever it is. So get ready.
I'm not going to have to put that on stop video and go change real quick and then come back. No. Thank you for the warning.
By the way, I was just kidding, by the way, but I'm glad you fell for that one. There's a lot on your plate right now. Given the void of leadership in Council District 14, I'd like to know what's on your mind. What are you thinking? What's your vision? And once you take over that leadership, what are the next 100 days going to look for us?
A couple things. One is, I'm honored that the voters of City 14 have given me an opportunity to represent them. And we were very fortunate to win outright the election March 3rd, a few months back. We're very fortunate that we don't have to campaign during the course of a COVID-19 era into the general election in November. So I've been incredibly honored by the voters of this incredible district. And I want to put City 14 in context for each and every one of you. It is all of downtown Los Angeles, the historic core. It's the arts district. It is Little Tokyo. It is all of Skid Row. It is the incredible, historic, amazing neighborhood of Boyle Heights. It is the projects of Pico as well as Estrada Courts. We have Ramona Gardens, the Ramona Gardens projects, all of LA County USC Medical Center, all that footprint. El Sereno, Rose Hills, University Hills. El Sereno is a great community. Half of Highland Park, I wish I had it all, but half of Highland Park. And then all of Eagle Rock and, a little bit of Glassell Park. It's an amazing, collection of neighborhoods. The people are stunningly amazing. And I'm honored. And there are a number of major issues that have impacted CD14 for a very, very long time. That predate many elected officials who are currently in position today. One is obviously the crisis, the humanitarian crisis of our lifetime, which I believe is the issue of homelessness. Los Angeles is home to the largest number of homeless individuals, unhoused individuals in the state of California. But more specifically, CD14 with all of Skid Row, we had the largest collection of unhoused individuals, not in Los Angeles or in California, but in the entire United States of America. There are more deeper, dense concentration of unhoused individuals in CD14 than any other city council district. Moreover, on the issue when we talk about climate change, and we talk about congestion, we talk about pollution, and we talk about all of that dirty air that our children breathe into their lungs every single day, especially if you live in Boyle Heights. Let me be very clear. We have 9 major freeways that crisscross CD14, my district, our district, like a serpent that chokes the air, the oxygen out of a young person's lungs. I have the 2 freeway, the 5, the 10, the 60, the 101, the 110, the 710, 210, and the 134 freeway. 9 major freeways in one city council district. So you can imagine all of that air pollution every single day that our children breathe into their lungs. And another issue I would say also too, which is very important, is the issue of housing. And especially in a neighborhood like Boyle Heights and Highland Park, where we've seen, so much displacement because of the market forces that drive gentrification, and how we deal with individuals who are currently housed, how we keep them housed, and how do we deal with the issue of supply and how we deal with development is going to be very critical for a lot of working class families in CD14. So major challenges in CD14, notwithstanding obviously the current trials and tribulations of the current council member of CD14. It's very sad. It's very unfortunate. I feel a lot of pain for his family and his children. But I look forward to assuming the reins, soon, and bringing the type of leadership that I brought to Sacramento when I was a member of the Assembly, a member of the California State Senate, and just recently the president of the California State Senate.
Council member-elect, thank you for describing the district. We know that redistricting, it didn't look like that. CD14 was very different. And when all those areas were added, it definitely brought about different challenges. What are we going to see from you for your first 100 days?
Well, a couple things. One, and Cristina, por favor, call me Kevin, not council member-elect. We know each other, and I know the formalities, but, Kevin or KDL is good enough.
Yep.
That when these calls come in, what happens, it gets interrupted, so I apologize about that. Let me say is the issue of homelessness. Yesterday, I spent part of my day going with U.S. federal judge David Carter, walking around Skid Row, meeting with some housing advocates. And what I want to do is I want to pull all of our resources together because we need to move urgently, quickly with the issue of housing. Let me say this. We are clearly one of the richest cities in the wealthiest state, in the wealthiest nation in the world. And the very fact that we have so many people who are living on our streets, living in our alleyways, living in our parks, living in freeway underpasses and overpasses nearby is shocking, and it's unbecoming of a great diverse city like Los Angeles. So one of the motions I need to move quickly is obviously the issue of how do we expedite quickly building permits for our housing community, affordability housing, workforce housing, housing for our low-income families that are accessible, not just luxury market, vertical skyscraper type of units, but people who need it. Because I'm very concerned about the following. Because of COVID-19, because of the coronavirus, this has impacted Latinos, I say, and African Americans and other poor communities, Asian Americans, in a triple threat, what I call a triple wave tsunami. One is clearly Latinos are being disproportionately impacted by both the mortality rate as well as the infection rate. That is happening because we have so much density in our low-income Latino communities. We have multi-generations under one roof. We have poverty, we have density, we have pre-health conditions, we have a big, huge health disparity. And we have people who, quite frankly, are essential workers. They have to go out and they have to make a living to pay that rent. So secondly, we had the public health issue. Secondly is the edict shelter in place, which has impacted Latinos more than anybody else. The inability to make a living and to pay your rent, to put food on the table. And it has forced so many Latino families to stand in modern day soup kitchen lines, waiting for boxes of food so their children can eat. And the third tsunami is the fact that, with all the major cuts, because there's no revenues coming to cities, county, and state governments, the very governmental services that our community needs in the most vulnerable moments of their lives will be slashed dramatically. So it's a triple wave tsunami that are impacting the Latino community and having a huge impact on City 14, especially our families, who live in Boyle Heights, and whether you live in Estrada Courts as well, or if you live over at Pico Aliso or Rose Hills projects or Ramona Gardens projects are most vulnerable, it's impacting them. So we're gonna deal with that issue and how we deal with the CARES dollars that are coming down from the federal government so we can distribute folks so we can keep them in their house. When we talk about economic justice, environmental justice, climate change, when we talk about opportunities to go on to higher education, University of California, Cal State, when we talk about transformational change when it comes to our local law enforcement, that's all for naught. If our communities are no longer living with a roof over the head and they're living on the sidewalk, because nuestras necesidades primordiales es el techo y es comida, el alimento.
Yeah, not to mention education and everything else that's been impacted. I was reminded this week that it's been week 20 of our quarantine back in March, and we're obviously coming up to August. And you talk about tsunamis, except that we just had an earthquake this morning, and it was
we did
from my home. But nonprofits, Kevin, nonprofits play an incredible role in your district. Tell me a little bit about how you plan on engage some of these and what you see with those nonprofits that are so important.
Well, the nonprofit community, the 501c3s and nonprofit clinics, community clinics, played such a huge role in that social safety network that has been tattered quite dramatically because of major draconian budget cuts, both at the local and state level, because of our current federal government and the occupant of the White House at this moment. So we're going to have to help bolster our nonprofit, community, because they are oftentimes the folks who reach our community the fastest. They have the credibility, the cachet, in engaging directly with many of our community members, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's immigration services for our DACA, for our undocumented community, whether it's community health clinics to get a PCR, diagnostic, test, COVID-19 or the antibody test. And my fear is right now is that because of the crushing deficits, because the lack of revenues coming into the local and state coffers, that some of our nonprofits may not be standing when the dust settles. and those doors must be shut. So that's why I'm talking about the paradox that when these community members need the most help more than ever before is a time when there may be least help. And that's why we had to advocate, and that's why we had to fight. That's why we had to reprioritize budget matters to make sure that our most vulnerable, our most marginal among our community members, are not hurt further. This is a time when we step up. This is a time when we back each other up. This is a time when we fight for what we know is right for our community members.
Kevin, thank you so much. You talk about dollars, and we know how those dollars sometimes stream down into our communities, and a lot of it has to do with census. Challenges with getting that information out. You look at your homeless population, how do we count them? And just communities that are not responding whatsoever. I'm sure that there are plenty of zip codes in CD14 that have a high rate of non-response. We've got organizations, nonprofits. You and I have been at it with citizenship campaigns, and you name it, for the undocumented, our vulnerable communities. What can we do? What are you doing to make sure that we have a proper count in CD14?
That's a very good question, Cristina. So to put this in context, we have who I'll be taking over CD14 very, very soon as local city council member. We have assembly members Miguel Santiago and Wendy Carrillo. We have my successor, Marilena Durazo, in the state senate, and we have my good friend Jimmy Gomez, who is our congressional member. So we have this overlay, and you're absolutely right. Our district geographically is one of the worst counted, not in Los Angeles, but in the entire state of California. And what those ramifications mean in the future is if we have a severe undercount of people who do exist in the community, Latinos, Latino immigrants, Latino undocumented immigrants, they're there. We need to get them counted. And if we have a severe undercount, what that means is when the redistricting commission comes together and when they start creating the lines for all the numbers that did not go counted, they have to go look for those numbers. So that means districts get stretched out to other parts of the city and other parts of the region, whether Glendale, Pasadena, Burbank, whether it's east towards Alhambra. And what that does, it has the effect of diluting the current power of representation that our community has today. And that means you may have elected officials who may not have and share the same values, or may not have the same fire from within, or may not have come from the same community or a very similar community where they were born or raised, and fight for those values, either in City Hall, in Sacramento, or Washington, D.C. And what that also means too, that means it's less money for healthcare, less money for childcare, less money for our nonprofit organizations to help the most marginalized. That's why having an accurate count is absolutely critical. I've been working very closely with the California Community Foundation, Efrain Escobedo. I have some of my folks making sure, remember, we're in a COVID-19, so folks don't want to open the door. Hola señora, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Yo soy fulano de tal. Estoy aquí para recibir la aplicación del censo. Hay que llenar el censo, etcétera, etcétera. No, hay que hacer las llamadas telefónicas. Estamos texteando en este momento. Estamos mandando mensajes a través de Facebook y todas las páginas, las redes sociales. So, we're working con Univision, we're working with Telemundo, we're working with Azteca, Estrella, all the radio stations as well too in Spanish language to really push out there the urgency and why it's so critical. Because clearly what Donald Trump is trying to do is he's trying to intimidate, our immigrant community by saying, we're not going to sign an executive order and saying, we're not going to count you. Well, we're going to win that case urgently, quickly in a federal courthouse. But the message is, he's trying to suppress the ability of folks being counted even more so. So what's at stake right now is we're talking about life and death right now. So that's why all of us are responsible collectively to make sure we get counted and that our neighbors, our family members, our loved ones get counted as well.
Thank you, Kevin. And I love the shout out to Efrain. Don't know of a better expert in civic engagement. And we know the importance. I don't even want to talk about elections and getting the vote out. I'm going to turn it over to Cindy because we're getting a lot of questions from our audience right now. Cindy, if you're there, please address a question to Kevin for us.
Yeah, thank you, Christina, and then thank you, Councilmember-elect, for joining us tonight. So we
Thank
do
you,
have a
Cindy.
couple of questions. I'll start off with one of the hot topics. I'm sure you've gotten this a lot, so I think your audience just wants to understand your position on the calls for the reallocation of funds of the police department and other preventative resources and programs. So your position on defunding the police.
Yeah, I'm open for reimagining and re-envisioning what a Los Angeles should look like. What it should look like with our healthcare disparities, what it should look like with the air that we breathe, what it should look like with regards to how we transform the economy and move towards a clean energy technology, how we deal with housing. So that means we have to look at the entire budget as a whole, holistically. And that means every facet and every department within the budget. And that also means the LAPD. And we have to look like, how can we repurpose dollars and stretch those dollars to the maximum ability possible by keeping our community safe, but at the same time making sure that we can invest those dollars in a way that provides real opportunity so all of our children can succeed. Listen, it's no secret that in certain zip codes where children do extremely well and go on to higher education, whether it's a public or private institution, become the lawyers, the executives, the entrepreneurs, the teachers, the professors. And there's certain zip codes also too, where statistically, we do not send a lot of children to UCLA, and the reality is we have sent a lot of our youth to Corcoran, to San Quentin, to Pelican Bay, and not to UCLA or Cal State LA. That's why we have to re-examine how we make certain types of investments that in the long run, will benefit all of our communities. So when we have a diverse community that is prospering, that has every opportunity before them, then that's when we know we're doing a good job. And right now, we're not doing a good job.
Thank you. So that question was from Angelica Solis Montero. So I wanted to give you, Angelica, an opportunity
Hi, Angelica.
to provide any commentary to his answer. And then I'm going to mute you right now. Angelica?
Hi, thank you again, Senator, for being here and for the opportunity. I think that my question was largely answered. I think I appreciate your perspective around providing a very holistic approach. It is absolutely, obviously, a very hot topic in our city, and the over-policing of certain communities. And I would imagine that in our district, Latinos face a lot of challenges. And so I appreciate that perspective in terms of really examining the different opportunities to re-envision how we reallocate resources, particularly as we enter an economic recession where residents will be hurting deeply. So thank you.
No, gracias, Angelica.
Thank you, Angelica. Also, Senator, I do have Ricardo Milares, Executive Director of Academia Avance, on the line.
Mireles, Ricardo Mireles.
Yes, how are you, Ricardo? I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak after I ask your question. But the question, Councilmember-elect, is what can you do as a council member to reduce the attacks on charter schools from LAUSD?
Well, let me say this. I know this is also a very, controversial issue, for charters or against charters, and it's sort of a dichotomy, either with us or against us on either side. I've always been supportive of our public schools, our public school institutions. I know that Ricardo Mireles himself has a wonderful, school, Avance, which is on Figueroa Street, which I actually walked by the other day. It's in Gil Cedillo's district, my brother next door. Went to Metro, Valderas, to get some tacos de tripitas y unas quesadillas, un licuado de fresa también, which is right next door to the church front, where Ricardo had extended me the honor of the invitation to go speak to one of the graduating classes as well too. My baseline has always been, I always support, our public school teachers. We need more investments in our public schools. Without a doubt, we need much more investments. We have a proposition that's on the ballot, which is Proposition 16, that rearranges Prop 13 in terms of commercial property to make more investments in our K through 14, which is Proposition 98. Ricardo has done an exceptional job, at Avance. That is a charter school as well too. And I support all institutions that educational outcomes are excellent. If you have an excellent educational outcome, I'm there for you.
Kevin, thank you. And I must also acknowledge that I'm glad I'm able to be on this call with the folks that are here, including Angelica Solis Montero, and we work very closely on a lot of issues. But I am como buen amigo, and I did insert in my comment, I know that picture behind you because we had Avanza students there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I
yes.
think.
Yeah.
That's your inauguration, I think, right?
For folks to see, that's my my swearing-in ceremony, my inauguration. It was at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. We had about 3,000 people there. Kamala Harris, Governor Gray Davis, senators. The woman who is swearing me in is a woman of color. She currently is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the state of California. And my daughter's next to me, and it was a wonderful moment. It's a historic moment. Let me put that moment in context, you know, for Cristina and everyone, and Cindy and Ricardo. You were there, you know, Ricardo. And because I was heavily criticized for that event at the Walt Disney Concert Hall.
I remember the time saying,
all the newspapers criticized me. And let me put this in context, because I think it's a metaphor, and it symbolizes what we struggle for, what we fight for. Historically, when you're the Speaker of the Assembly or the President of the Senate, we have our swearing-in ceremony in the state capitol in Sacramento, and I did that. But I wanted to have our event in Los Angeles because I knew there were so many working families who couldn't afford to get on the plane at Burbank or LAX, Southwest Airlines, pay for a hotel room in Sacramento and come back. They just don't have the money. They can't take the time off work. So I wanted to have the event in Los Angeles. So a friend of mine, you know, Ricardo Lara, says, well, why don't we have it at the Walt Disney Concert Hall? I said, oh, I don't know if we can have it there. That's kind of fancy. He said, no, that's a public building. It belongs to the people. Let's have it there. So he actually arranged it, you know, and we had it there. And the criticism from the newspapers was severe and harsh. But the undertone was, oye, mocoso, know your place.
How dare you?
How dare you have it at the Walt Disney Concert Hall? Because if I had it at Roosevelt High School in Boyle Heights, if I had it at the Placito Olvera with the same number of people, with the same dignitaries, they wouldn't have said a single word. So that just shows you that regardless of what level you're at, you know, the spotlight is always on you. And I said, you know what? And I remember, I think a couple years later, I was at an editorial board of a newspaper, which I won't name, and it was going well. And then they had asked me the question, you know, Mr. President, in retrospect, now that you've really grown into your position, you have a large number of accomplishments, when you go back, would you have made the same decision, having your event at the Walt Disney Concert Hall? And I didn't flinch. I said, absolutely. Because what has happened is that if you're from Pacific Palisades, if you're from Encino, if you're from Hancock Park, if you are from Hermosa Beach, if you're from Palos Verdes or Brentwood, when you go to the Walt Disney Concert Hall, it's normalized. It's not questioned. But if you're from Boyle Heights or Pacoima, if you're from Pico Union or Highland Park or El Sereno, it's like, oh yeah, what are you guys doing there? Unless you work there, or is there a mariachi festival concert going on tonight, you know? So that's the power of the narrative, and how we got to control our narrative as well too. So we create a much more inclusive society, whether people like it or not. And be mindful, the folks who criticized me were not big right-wing Trump supporters. There were everyday folks, you know, from Los Angeles and elsewhere, who couldn't conceive of the notion that people of color, primarily Latinos, could actually go into the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Moreover, the last thing I'll say is this, is that you had ushers con lágrimas. And I had to ask, why, ¿por qué lloraron? What was the lágrima? Because for the very first time in their lives, they were sitting people, showing them with their tickets, sitting them, you know, people who look like them, who came from the neighborhood that they come from, that they live in. So that's why, esto va mucho más allá, metafóricamente. That's why it was important. I have it there and say, absolutely, I'd have it again, and again, and again, and again.
Kevin, I remember that very well, and I think I even worked with some of your staff, and we were sending in a response to the Times the next day to their ridiculous criticism. And the point that you just made, every day, every single event, you know, they fill up that place with people from wherever they're coming from, the West Side, But at the end of the event, it's Raza that is cleaning the place. We're in there every time. We're just not getting recognized for it. And I appreciate you very much because you always recognize those people, and you definitely did that time. I do want to not let you off the hook.
Ricardo, I am going to step in only because we're being respectful of the time that we've allotted for this evening, and we're a little bit over. So
Bye, Ricardo.
Yeah. Kevin, we're going to wrap up. It's been 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. Already? So quick?
But don't go away. Don't go away.
Okay.
We're wrapping up. At least what we do now is we try to engage everybody else to make it more of a happy hour, less,
Okay.
and so please stick with us. But I want to thank you. Can't wait for your inauguration this year. En esa malteada de fresa o frambuesa, no sé, whatever flavor you want. As a reminder, the Latinx Fund.
Un batido de mamey.
También ese. The Latino Coalition of Los Angeles launched the Campaign for Nonprofit Resilience to ensure that local grassroots nonprofits who primarily serve communities of color withstand the current crises. More than 1,200 community leaders have already signed on to the campaign, and we encourage all of you to sign on, and please sign that petition, sign on to that very, very special campaign. We need thousands of signatures by August 1st. Yes, today is July 30th, so our time is running out. We want to invite you to next week's CharLA, Fireside CharLA. We're featuring George Gascon, who is known in Los Angeles and left us for a bit to be in San Francisco. He's going to be our special guest. He is running for the district attorney slot in Los Angeles County, and we look forward to him. Cindy, Jake, everybody behind the scenes, Alejandra, your team for all the translation. Muchísimas gracias.